when a mysterious letter arrives on Elon Musk's desk from Gareth Venter, a name from his painful past in South Africa, his carefully built world begins to shake. For 35 years, Elon believed this man destroyed his family's security and happiness. Now, dying of cancer, Gareth asks for one thing Elon never thought he'd give: forgiveness. As Elon reluctantly agrees to meet the man who shaped his childhood trauma, he discovers shocking truths about his past that will change everything. He thought he knew. The betrayal that drove his relentless ambition might not be what it seemed, and the man he's hated for decades might have actually been trying to save him all along. What happens when the story you've built your life around turns out to be wrong? Elon's response to this revelation will leave everyone speechless. Elon Musk drummed his fingers on his glass desk, staring at the cream-colored envelope that had arrived with the morning mail. Most correspondence went through assistants, email filters, and digital channels. Physical letters rarely made it to his desk, but this one was different. The return address caught his eye immediately. Gareth Venter, 14 Bayside Drive, Cape Town, South Africa. Elon's fingers stopped drumming. The office around him seemed to fade away. The models of rockets, the view of the SpaceX factory floor, the gentle hum of the air conditioning. All of it disappeared as a rush of memories flooded in. Gareth Venter, a name he hadn't heard in decades, a name he'd tried to forget. "Mr. Musk?" His assistant, Talia, stood in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Your meeting with the engine team starts in 5 minutes." Elon blinked, returning to the present. "Cancel it." "Sir?" Talia's eyebrows shot up. Elon never canceled meetings about rocket engines. "Reschedule for tomorrow morning. Something's come up." His voice sounded strange, even to his own ears. Talia nodded and retreated, closing the door softly behind her. Alone again, Elon picked up the envelope. It was light, but it felt as heavy as a black hole. The handwriting was shaky, the penmanship of an elderly man. Gareth must be what, 78 now? The last time Elon had seen him, he'd been in his prime. Tall, loud, with a booming laugh that could fill a room. Before everything changed. Elon slid his finger under the flap and tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the same cream color as the envelope. He unfolded it slowly, as if it might bite. "Dear Elon, I know my name likely brings back painful memories. You have every right to throw this letter away, unread. If you've gotten this far, thank you for that small mercy. I've watched your rise from afar with a complex mix of pride and shame. Pride in what you've accomplished, despite the hardships of your early years. Hardships I played a significant role in creating. Shame for the same reason. I'm dying, Elon. Doctors give me months, not years. Before I go, I'm trying to make amends where I can. You're at the top of that list. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. But I would like to meet with you one last time, to apologize in person for what I did to your family. To you. There are things you should know, truths that have remained hidden. If you're willing, my nurse Lorato can arrange details that work with your schedule. Her number is below. Regardless of your decision, I wish you peace. You've built an extraordinary life. I hope someday the shadows I cast over your childhood fade in the light of all you've created. Gareth Venter Elon read the letter twice, then a third time, his heart hammered against his ribs. The controlled calm he'd maintained in board meetings, during rocket launch failures, through factory production crises, all of it deserted him now. He crumpled the letter in his fist, then immediately regretted it and tried to smooth it out on the desk. "Damn you," he whispered. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Musk?" Talia's voice again. "Is everything all right? The team is asking when you'd like to reschedule." Elon pressed the button. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m., and clear my schedule for the rest of today. Tell them I'm working on the Mars habitation designs." It was a lie, the kind of excuse no one at SpaceX would question. Mars was sacred ground. Alone again, Elon walked to the window overlooking the factory floor. Below him, engineers and technicians moved purposefully around the massive components of the next-generation spacecraft, all of them working toward his vision, his dream of making humanity multiplanetary. A dream born partly from wonder and ambition, yes, but also from pain. From a childhood where the ground beneath his feet never felt solid. Because of men like Gareth Venter, Elon pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Mom? It's me." May Musk's voice came through, warm and clear. "Elon, what a lovely surprise. Is everything okay?" He hesitated, looking down at the crumpled letter. "I got a letter today, from Gareth Venter." The silence on the other end stretched so long that Elon checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Mom? I'm here." Her voice had changed, grown tight. "What did he want?" "He's dying. He wants to meet. To apologize," he says. Another long pause. "After all this time?" It wasn't a question. Should I see him? Elon rarely asked for advice, but this was different. This was about a wound they shared. "Oh, honey." Her voice softened. "That's not for me to say. We each have to find our own way to peace with the past." Elon gazed down at the factory floor again, at the dreams he'd built from the ashes of his childhood. "I don't know if I want peace with him. I don't know what I want." "You don't have to decide right now." But even as she said it, Elon knew he would meet Gareth. Curiosity had always been his driving force. For better or worse, he couldn't walk away from unanswered questions. "I think I might see him," he said finally. "If you do, I hope it brings you closure." She paused. "Will you let me know what you decide?" Of course. After they hung up, Elon sat at his desk for a long time, the letter open before him. Outside his office, SpaceX continued its relentless push toward the future. Inside, he was trapped. In the past, he picked up the phone again and dialed the number at the bottom of the letter. "Hello, this is Lorato speaking." Elon took a deep breath. "This is Elon Musk. I'm calling about Gareth Venter." "Mr. Musk." The woman's voice betrayed only the slightest hint of surprise. "Mr. Venter will be very glad to hear from you." "I haven't decided anything yet," Elon said quickly. "I just want to know more about his condition, about what he wants." "Of course." Lorato's voice was professional, calm. "Perhaps we could arrange a call between you and Mr. Venter first, before any decisions about meeting in person." It was a reasonable suggestion. A phone call, a barrier between himself and the man who had helped destroy his family's life. "Tomorrow," Elon said, 4 p.m. Pacific time. "I'll make sure he's ready." She paused. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. Whatever comes of this, thank you for responding." After hanging up, Elon turned to his computer and typed Gareth Venter into the search bar. The results were sparse. A few business listings in South Africa from decades ago, a mention in a local Cape Town newspaper about a charity donation. Nothing that would hint at the role this man had played in the life of one of the world's most famous entrepreneurs. Some ghosts didn't leave digital footprints. Talia knocked, gently, and entered with a stack of papers. "The revised production schedules you asked for." She stopped when she saw his face. "Mr. Musk, are you all right?" Elon looked up, forcing his features into a neutral expression. "Fine. Just thinking about an old problem." As she left, he folded Gareth's letter and slipped it into his pocket. Tomorrow, he would hear the voice of the man who had cast such a long shadow over his childhood. Tomorrow, he would decide whether to grant the dying man's wish. For now, he had rockets to build and a future to create. A future far from the pain of Pretoria and the memories that still haunted him even after all he'd achieved. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Elon tossed in his bed, Gareth's letter on the nightstand beside him. When he finally drifted off, his dreams carried him back to Pretoria, back to being 10 years old again. The summer heat pressed down on young Elon as he sat under the jacaranda tree, a book about rockets balanced on his knees. The pages showed diagrams of thrust vectors and fuel mixtures, concepts far beyond most 10-year-olds, but not him. He traced the drawings with his finger, lost in thoughts of space travel. "There's the little genius!" A booming voice broke his concentration. Gareth Venter strode across the lawn, a tall man with broad shoulders and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He wore an expensive suit despite the heat, his gold watch flashing in the sunlight. "What are you reading today, boy?" Gareth plucked the book from Elon's hands without waiting for an answer. "Rockets again? You should be playing cricket like a normal kid." Elon stared at his empty hands. "May I have my book back, please?" Gareth laughed, ruffling Elon's hair roughly. "You're going to burn out that brain before you're 20. He tossed the book back, missing Elon's lap so it fell to the ground. "Your father's inside. Tell him I've arrived." Young Elon picked up his book, carefully brushing dirt from the cover before going inside. He found his father, Errol, in his study with a glass of whiskey, though it wasn't even noon yet. "Dad, Mr. Venter is here." Errol Musk straightened his tie. "How do I look?" Elon shrugged. "Fine." His father frowned. "Just fine?" "This is an important meeting, Elon. Gareth's bringing investors. This could change everything for us." Change everything. Those words would echo in Elon's mind years later, though not in the way his father had meant. In the weeks that followed, Gareth became a constant presence in their home. He and Errol would lock themselves in the study, voices sometimes rising, in heated discussion, sometimes dissolving into laughter. Elon's mother, May, grew quieter with each visit, her smile tighter. One night, Elon crept downstairs for a glass of water and heard them arguing in the study. "It's too risky, Gareth." His father's voice was slurred. "What if we get caught?" "Don't be weak, Errol." Gareth's voice was sharp as a knife. "This is our chance. Once in a lifetime. Think of what you could give your family." "I don't know." "You know what your problem is?" Gareth's voice lowered. "You think too small. Like that odd boy of yours with his head in the clouds." Elon froze on the stairs, heart pounding. "Leave Elon out of this." His father's voice had an edge Elon rarely heard. "I'm just saying, the boy needs toughening up. The world eats dreamers alive." Elon slipped back upstairs, forgetting about his water. 2 days later, he overheard his mother on the phone, voice hushed but urgent. "I don't like it, Kay. Errol's changed since Gareth came into the picture. He's taking risks, making promises I don't think he can keep." A pause. "The children? They sense something's wrong, especially Elon. He notices everything." 3 months after Gareth first appeared under the jacaranda tree, everything fell apart. Elon came home from school to find his mother sitting at the kitchen table, eyes red from crying. Kimball and Tosca were unusually quiet, picking at their snacks. "Where's Dad?" Elon asked. May took a deep breath. "Your father won't be home tonight, or for a while." She tried to smile, but it crumbled. "We need to talk about some changes that are coming." That night, Elon learned new words: bankruptcy, fraud, betrayal. He didn't understand all the details, only that Gareth Venter had somehow convinced his father to invest everything they had in a scheme that collapsed. That the fancy house with the jacaranda tree wouldn't be theirs much longer. That his parents' marriage, already fragile, had shattered under the strain. They moved to a small apartment the following month. His father rarely visited. His mother took more modeling jobs, often leaving Elon in charge of his younger siblings. At school, whispers followed him after the story hit the local papers. "That's Musk. His dad got swindled by that Venter guy. I heard they're dead broke now." "My dad says Venter skipped town with all their money." The worst day came when Elon saw Gareth by chance. He was walking home from school, taking a shortcut past the expensive shops his mother could no longer afford. Through a restaurant window, he spotted Gareth, laughing with men in expensive suits, a glass of champagne in his hand. Their eyes met through the glass. Gareth's smile faltered for just a moment before he turned away, back to his companions. That night, Elon made himself a promise. He would never be vulnerable like his father. Never trust easily. Never depend on anyone else for his success or security. He would build something no one could take away. In the months that followed, Elon retreated into books and computers. His mother worried about his isolation but couldn't deny his brilliance. By 12, he had sold his first computer program. By 15, he had mapped out a future far from Pretoria, far from the memories of Gareth Venter and what he had done. To their family, Elon woke with a start, his sheets damp with sweat. The dream had been so vivid, not a distortion of memory, but a perfect replay, as if the intervening decades had vanished. He checked the time. 4:17 a.m. Sleep wouldn't return now. He showered and dressed, then drove to SpaceX hours before anyone else would arrive. In the quiet of the early morning, he walked the factory floor alone, running his hand along the metal skin of the rocket that would someday carry humans to Mars. This was his answer to Gareth Venter. This was his proof that the odd boy with his head in the clouds hadn't been eaten alive by the world. Instead, he was building machines to leave it behind. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from his mother. "Thinking of you today. Call if you need to talk." She would be remembering too, he realized. One letter from Gareth had pulled them both back through time. As the sun rose and employees began to arrive, Elon retreated to his office. The phone call with Gareth was still hours away, but the past had already come rushing back, as vivid and painful as if it had happened yesterday, rather than 35 years ago in a country half a world away. Elon's morning meetings passed in a blur. He nodded at the right moments, approved designs, and made decisions, but his mind kept drifting to the phone call scheduled for that afternoon. During a break, he found himself staring at a timeline displayed in the SpaceX lobby, a visual history of his journey from South Africa to becoming one of the world's most influential entrepreneurs. The timeline didn't show everything, of course. It didn't show 17-year-old Elon arriving in Canada with barely $100 in his pocket, sleeping on his cousin's couch, taking odd jobs to survive. It didn't show the nights he slept in the office during his first startup, showering at the YMCA, eating hot dogs to save money while coding until his eyes burned. It didn't show the panic attacks that sometimes gripped him when deals nearly fell through, when everything he'd built teetered on the edge of collapse. Moments that triggered memories of that day in Pretoria when his childhood security had vanished. The timeline showed successes, not struggles. Zip2, PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla, one victory after another, as if each had been inevitable. "Quite a journey," said a voice beside him. Elon turned to find Talia, his assistant, studying the timeline with him. "Just the highlights," he replied. "Still, impressive," she said. "Most people would have been satisfied after selling PayPal. They wouldn't have risked it all again on rockets and electric cars." Elon's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "I'm not most people." Clearly. Talia checked her watch. "The investors will be here in 10 minutes. As they walked back toward the conference room, Elon thought about what she'd said. Why hadn't he stopped after PayPal? He had made enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. Instead, he had poured everything into SpaceX and Tesla, pushing himself and everyone around him to the breaking point, working 100-hour weeks, sleeping under his desk when necessary. He knew the answer, though he rarely admitted it even to himself. He was still running from the shadow of Gareth Venter, still trying to build something too big to fail, too important to be taken away, still trying to prove that the odd boy with his head in the clouds could reshape the world. The investor Z left satisfied 3 hours later. SpaceX would have the funding for its next phase of development. Elon should have felt triumphant. Instead, as 4 o'clock approached, he felt a knot forming in his stomach. At precisely 4 p.m., his private line rang. "Hello, Elon." Gareth's voice was thinner than he remembered, the South African accent softened by age but still there. "Thank you for taking my call." Elon sat rigidly at his desk. "You said you're dying," a dry chuckle. "No small talk, then." "Yes, pancreatic cancer. Terminal. I'm sorry to hear that." The words came automatically, though Elon wasn't sure if he meant them. "Are you?" Gareth's tone held no bitterness, only curiosity. "After what I did to your family, I wouldn't blame you for feeling otherwise." Elon's grip tightened on the phone. "What exactly do you want from me, Gareth?" "A meeting. A chance to explain. Not to excuse. Nothing could excuse what happened. But to give you the full story." "The full story," Elon repeated. "It's been 35 years. "Yes," Gareth's voice dropped lower. "And for 35 years, I've carried this weight. I've watched you from afar, your successes, your setbacks, your incredible rise. I've often wondered how much of your drive came from wanting to prove me wrong." The question hit too close to home. Elon stood abruptly, walking to the window. "You flatter yourself if you think my career has anything to do with you." "Perhaps." A pause, filled with the sound of labored breathing. "But I think we both know that childhood wounds shape us in ways we don't always recognize." Elon stared out at the rocket assembly building. "I have a company to run. Several, actually. I can't drop everything to fly to South Africa for a..." "What? A deathbed confession?" "I'm in Los Angeles." This caught Elon off guard. "What?" "I've been receiving treatment at UCLA Medical Center for the past month. Experimental therapies. They haven't worked, but they've bought me a little time." Another pause. "Time enough, I hope, to make amends where I can." The knot in Elon's stomach tightened. Gareth was here, in the same city. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Thank you." Relief flooded Gareth's voice. "That's more than I deserve. Lerato has my contact information. Take your time." After hanging up, Elon sat motionless, the phone still in his hand. Gareth Venter, the man whose actions had torn his family apart, was just across town. The man he had privately blamed for years of struggle was asking for forgiveness. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister Tosca. "Mom told me about Gareth. Are you okay?" Elon hadn't spoken to his sister in weeks. They were both too busy, with their respective companies. But of course, she would reach out now. Tosca had been too young to understand everything that happened in Pretoria, but she had lived through the aftermath. He texted back, "Fine, just business as usual." Her reply came seconds later. "You never were a good liar, big brother. Call me tonight?" Elon put the phone down without answering. He needed to think, needed to decide whether reopening old wounds would bring healing or just more pain. By the time he left the office that night, he still hadn't made up his mind. But he knew one thing for certain. Gareth Venter had already disrupted his carefully constructed life, whether they met in person or not. 3 days passed. Elon buried himself in work, a familiar strategy for avoiding difficult decisions. He hadn't called Tosca back. He hadn't contacted Lorato about meeting Gareth. If he just focused on SpaceX and Tesla, maybe the whole situation would fade away. Then his phone exploded with notifications during a morning meeting. "Excuse me," he said, stepping out. The screen showed dozens of messages from his PR team, his mother, and his siblings. Opening the first one, he felt the blood drain from his face. The headline from TechCrunch read, "Mystery Man from Musk's past seeks forgiveness. Who is Gareth Venter?" Somehow, the story had leaked. Elon rushed to his office, barking orders to Talia to get his PR director on the line immediately. Within minutes, the situation became clear. A nurse at UCLA Medical Center had overheard Gareth talking about Elon and sold the story to a blogger. The blogger had connected enough dots to publish a speculative piece, which had been picked up by larger outlets. "The timing couldn't be worse," said Marion, his PR director, over the speakerphone. "The Starship launches next week. This could overshadow everything." "Kill it," Elon said. "Issue a no comment and move on." "It's too late," Marion replied. "Social media is already digging. Someone found old South African newspaper archives mentioning your father's business dealings with Venter. They're piecing together the bankruptcy, the move, everything." Elon closed his eyes, feeling a headache building behind them. "What does Gareth have to say about this?" "Nothing yet. But reporters are trying to track him down at UCLA. Find out if he spoke to anyone," Elon said. "I want to know if he did this deliberately." After hanging up, Elon sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen as more headlines appeared. Elon Musk's secret childhood trauma revealed. South African businessman seeks deathbed redemption from Musk. The man who nearly destroyed the Musk family fortune. His phone rang. Tosca, again. This time, he answered. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. "Yes," he said. "It's being handled." "Handled?" Her voice rose. "Elon, they're digging up everything. Someone already called Mom. And Kimball's getting questions at his restaurants." Elon pinched the bridge of his nose. "What do you want me to do, Tosca? I can't exactly fire off a tweet about our childhood trauma." "No, but you could talk to Gareth. Find out if he leaked this." "I doubt it," Elon admitted. "What would he gain? He wanted a private meeting." Then someone around him did. Tosca paused. "The kids are asking questions. Astrid saw something online." This caught Elon's attention. His nephew shouldn't be dragged into this. "What did she see?" "Someone dug up old photos of us in Pretoria. Before everything." Another pause. "She wants to know why we never talk about Grandpa Errol's business partner. Why we never mentioned Gareth." Elon closed his eyes again. The past wasn't just haunting him now. It was spilling over onto the next generation. "I'll figure it out," he promised. "Tell Astrid, tell her it's complicated adult stuff, and I'll explain someday when she's older." After hanging up, Elon stared out the window, watching rockets being assembled in the distance. His carefully compartmentalized life was unraveling. The barriers he had built between his painful past and his successful present were crumbling. His phone rang again. This time, it was Tallulah, his ex-wife. "I just saw the news," she said. "Are you all right?" Despite their divorce, Tallulah still knew him better than most. They had maintained a friendship that sometimes surprised even them. "I'm fine," he said automatically. "No, you're not," she replied. "I remember how you would wake up sometimes talking about South Africa, about your father. You never mentioned Gareth by name, but I'm guessing he was part of those nightmares." Elon said nothing. "The children are asking questions," she continued. "Xavier saw something online. I didn't know what to tell him." The thought of his son reading about this twisted his stomach. "What did you say?" "That sometimes adults have complicated histories, and they should hear yours from you, not the internet." She paused. "They're with me this weekend. Maybe you could come over and talk to them?" Elon checked his calendar. The next few days were packed with meetings about the upcoming launch, but his children deserved better than to learn about his past from gossip sites. "I'll be there Saturday morning," he promised. By the time he hung up, his PR team had sent a draft statement for his approval. Recent speculation about Mr. Musk's childhood in South Africa involves private family matters from over 3 decades. Ego. Mr. Musk respectfully requests privacy as he addresses these personal issues and continues to focus on SpaceX's upcoming Starship launch, which will revolutionize access to space. It said nothing while sounding like something. A classic PR move. Elon approved it with a single word. "Fine." Minutes later, Talia knocked on his door. "Mr. Musk? There's a call from UCLA Medical Center. It's Lerato, Gareth Venter's nurse. She says it's urgent." Elon hesitated, then nodded. "Put her through." Lerato's voice was tense. "Mr. Musk, I'm so sorry about the news stories. Mr. Venter is devastated. He had no idea this would happen." "Then who leaked it?" Elon demanded. "A night nurse who overheard Mr. Venter talking about you. She's been fired, but the damage is done." She paused. "Mr. Venter's condition has worsened with the stress. The doctors say..." Her voice broke slightly. "They say he doesn't have much time left. Days, maybe?" Elon felt conflicted emotions warring within him. Anger at the invasion of privacy, suspicion about the convenient timing, but also an unexpected pang at the thought of Gareth dying before he could hear what the man had to say. "What is he asking for?" Elon said finally. "The same as before. A meeting, a chance to explain. But now, there's more urgency." Elon looked at his schedule for the day, back-to-back meetings until late evening. Then he thought of the headlines, his worried siblings, his questioning children. "Tomorrow," he said. "I can come tomorrow morning." "Thank you, Mr. Musk. I'll tell him." After hanging up, Elon called Marion back. "I'm meeting with Gareth Venter tomorrow. No press, no statements beforehand. But I want you to prepare for all scenarios after." "Understood," she said. "And the launch next week?" "Proceeds as planned," he said firmly. "My personal life won't interfere with making life multiplanetary." But as he returned to his meetings, Elon couldn't help wondering if the past he'd tried so hard to outrun was finally catching up to him, and what that might mean for everything he'd built since leaving Pretoria behind. In a private room at UCLA Medical Center, Gareth Venter sat propped up against pillows. His once powerful frame now gaunt and fragile. The machines beside his bed beeped steadily, monitoring the vital signs of a body that was slowly shutting down. Lorato adjusted his IV line and checked the monitors before speaking. "He's coming tomorrow morning." Gareth's eyes, still bright blue, despite the pallor of his face, widened. Elon agreed? Even after the news stories? He did. Lorato smoothed the blanket over his legs. "But you need to rest now if you want to be strong enough for the meeting." Gareth nodded. But rest was the furthest thing from his mind. After 35 years, he would finally face the boy whose life he had altered so dramatically. Now, one of the most famous men on the planet. "Has the press been calling again?" he asked. Lorato's expression tightened. "Constantly. Security is keeping them away from this floor. I'm so sorry about Nurse Jenkins. I never imagined she would sell your story." "People do desperate things. For money," Gareth said softly. "I, of all people, should know that." He gazed out the window at the Los Angeles skyline, thoughts drifting back to another time, another place. Pretoria, in the late 1980s, where his path had first crossed with the Musk family. "Would you like to talk about it?" Lorato asked, sitting in the chair beside his bed. Over the past months of caring for him, she had become more than just his nurse. She was his confidant, perhaps his only friend in this final chapter of his life. "About Elon?" he asked. "About all of it. You've told me pieces, but never the whole story." She checked her watch. "My shift doesn't end for hours, and you need to stay awake a bit longer to take your evening medication anyway." Gareth was silent for a long moment. He had never told anyone the complete truth. Not the lawyers, not the bankruptcy court, not even his own family. But now, with death so close he could almost feel its cold breath on his neck, perhaps it was time. "I met Elon Musk in 1985, he began. "I was already successful in mining equipment sales. Errol was an engineer looking for investors in a new venture. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who could convince you that black was white if he talked long enough." Gareth shifted, wincing at the pain that never fully subsided despite the medications. "I was impressed by him at first. He had this beautiful family. May was a model, already somewhat famous in South Africa. And the children." His voice softened. "Elon was different from other kids. Quieter, always reading, asking questions that would stump most adults. I could tell right away he was special." Lorato nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Errol and I became business partners. On the surface, we were developing technologies for the mining industry, but Errol had other ideas. Connections with people who operated in gray areas. He started suggesting ways we could make significantly more money if we were willing to bend rules." Gareth paused, his breathing labored. Lorato offered him water, which he sipped through a straw. "I should have walked away then, but I didn't. You see, I had my own secrets." He closed his eyes briefly. "My childhood in Cape Town had been brutal. My father was violent, unpredictable. By 15, I was homeless, sleeping in alleyways, stealing to survive. I clawed my way up from nothing, but I carried the fear of losing everything with me always." He looked directly at Lorato. "When you've been truly poor, not just struggling, but hungry and afraid every day, it changes something in you. You'll do almost anything to never feel that way again." "So you agreed to Errol's schemes?" she asked softly. "Not at first. For months I resisted. But then my first wife left me, taking our daughter. My businesses were struggling, and Errol kept promising incredible returns. Eventually, I gave in. Gareth stared at his weathered hands. The details don't matter now. Money laundering, primarily. We moved funds for people who needed them hidden. It was working well until Errol got greedy. He started skimming, taking more than our agreed percentage. The people we were working for noticed. "What happened?" Lorato asked, though she suspected she knew from what Gareth had told her previously. "They threatened us, of course, but they didn't want blood. They wanted money. All the money. I had to make a choice." Gareth's voice grew hoarse. "Give them everything I had, or let them take everything from Errol's family too. I chose to protect the family by taking the blame," Lorato said. Gareth nodded. "I confessed to embezzling from our legitimate business ventures, said I'd gambled everything away. The bankruptcy court believed it. Errol's family lost their home, their comfortable life, but they were safe. If I had revealed the truth, it would have been much worse." "And Errol let you take the blame?" Lorato sounded incredulous. "Gladly." Gareth's mouth twisted in a bitter smile. "He played the victim perfectly. Even believed it himself, I think. He had a remarkable capacity for self-deception. And you never told anyone the truth? Not even after you'd served your time? What would have been the point? The damage was done. The Musk family had moved on. May had taken the children too. Canada by then. Errol had new business ventures, a new family. And I had my penance to do." Lorato was quiet for a moment. "Does Elon know any of this?" "No." Gareth shook his head slowly. "As far as he knows, I'm the monster who destroyed his family's security, who helped break apart his parents' marriage, who forced them from their home. And now you want to tell him the truth before you die." It wasn't a question. "Not for my sake," Gareth said quickly. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But Elon deserves the truth. He's built his life on a foundation that includes hatred for me. What might change for him if he knew what really happened? Or it could just cause more pain," Lorato suggested gently. "Sometimes old wounds are better left alone." "Perhaps." Gareth looked tired suddenly, the conversation draining what little energy he had. "But I've carried this burden for 35 years. Before I die, I want one person to know the whole truth, and it should be him. The boy whose eyes met mine through that restaurant window all those years ago. The boy who saw me celebrating when he thought I'd stolen everything from his family." Lorato checked her watch. "Time for your medication. Then you should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." As she prepared his evening doses, Gareth closed his eyes, remembering the last time he had seen Elon in person. A skinny boy with serious eyes, staring through the glass with a look of such betrayal it had haunted Gareth's dreams for decades. Tomorrow, that boy would walk through his door as a man. A billionaire. A visionary who had changed the world in ways Gareth could never have imagined. And Gareth would finally have the chance to explain why he had done what he did. Not to ease his own conscience, but to free Elon from a burden of hatred he had never needed to carry. If Elon would listen. If Gareth could find the right words. If he had enough time left. As evening fell over Los Angeles, Elon found himself on a video call with his mother. May Musk's elegant face filled his screen, concern evident in her eyes. Though in her 70s, she remained striking. Her modeling career had extended well past the age when most retired, making her an icon of ageless beauty. But to Elon, she was simply the woman who had held their family together when everything fell apart. "You're really going to see him tomorrow?" May asked, her voice carrying the slight accent that years in North America had never quite erased. Yes, Elon replied. His nurse says he doesn't have much time left. May's expression tightened. I don't know if this is wise, Elon. That man caused us so much pain. I need to hear what he has to say. Elon ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. If I don't, I'll always wonder. May hesitated. Just be careful. Gareth Venter was always persuasive. Even when he was destroying our lives, he could make you believe he had your best interests at heart. After saying goodbye to his mother, Elon found himself dialing his brother Kimball. Unlike their conversation with Tosca, which had been tense and filled with worry, Kimball offered a different perspective. Maybe this is what you need, his brother said thoughtfully. You've carried this for so long, Elon. The anger, the distrust. I've watched how hard it is for you to let people in. That's not because of Gareth, Elon protested. That's just who I am. Is it? Kimball challenged gently. Or is it who you became after Pretoria? After watching Dad and Gareth tear everything down? The question hung between them, uncomfortable in its precision. All I'm saying, Kimball continued, is that forgiveness isn't about releasing Gareth from anything. It's about freeing yourself. Later that evening, as Elon worked in his home office, his phone lit up with a message from an unexpected source. Zimvo Nkosi, his closest childhood friend from South Africa. They had fallen out of regular contact over the years, connecting only, occasionally, but apparently the news had reached him too. Saw the headlines about Gareth. Remember how we used to hide when he came over because he always criticized our rocket drawings? You're a bigger man than me if you can forgive him. Call if you need to talk, old friend. The message brought a flood of memories. Afternoons spent designing spaceships with Zimvo, both of them dreaming of escaping Earth someday. Zimvo had been there through it all, had seen firsthand how Gareth's presence had changed the atmosphere in the Musk household, how Errol became more volatile, how the stability of Elon's world had crumbled. With Zimvo's words echoing in his mind, Elon made one final call to Dr. Chen, the therapist he had been seeing discreetly for years. Few people knew about these sessions. In the public eye, Elon presented himself as relentlessly logical, dismissive of emotional concerns, but privately, he had recognized long ago that the trauma of his childhood required professional help to manage. You're facing a significant trigger from your past, Dr. Chen said after Elon explained the situation. How are you feeling about tomorrow's meeting? I don't know, Elon admitted. Angry, curious, uncertain. All normal reactions, Dr. Chen assured him. Remember what we've discussed about your core beliefs that formed during that time in Pretoria? The belief that you can't trust others, that security can vanish in an instant, that you must control everything to be safe. Elon was silent. This meeting with Gareth offers a chance to directly address the source of some of those beliefs, Dr. Chen continued. But it's important to manage your expectations. Whatever he says, whether it's a plea for forgiveness, an explanation, or something else entirely, it won't magically heal the past. Then what's the point? Elon asked. The point is that you're choosing to face this instead of avoiding it. That's significant progress from where you were when we started working together. After the call ended, Elon stood at the window of his minimalist home, looking out at the lights of Los Angeles. Somewhere in that sprawl of illumination was Gareth Venter, also awake perhaps, also contemplating their meeting tomorrow. Elon's phone buzzed one last time. A text from Tallulah. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that your past shaped you, but doesn't define you. The kids and I are here if you need us. It was strange how this crisis had brought so many people from different chapters of his life back into communication. His mother, his siblings, his childhood friend, his ex-wife, each offering their perspective, their support. For someone who prided himself on self-reliance, on needing no one, it was an uncomfortable reminder of how connected he remained to others. How much their opinions still mattered to him, even if he rarely admitted it. As midnight approached, Elon found himself no closer to knowing how he would feel when face to face with Gareth Venter. But one thing had become clear through these conversations. This meeting wasn't just about Gareth and his request for forgiveness. It was about Elon himself, about the boy he had been in Pretoria, and the man he had become in spite of, or perhaps because of, what happened there. Tomorrow would be a reckoning with the past, a confrontation not just with Gareth, but with the lingering effects of those childhood wounds that had driven him relentlessly forward, always building, always pushing boundaries, always trying to create something too important to fail, too valuable to be taken away. Tomorrow, he would look his oldest fear in the face. Sleep eluded Elon that night. He tossed in his spacious but sparsely furnished bedroom, mind racing with memories and questions. Around 4 a.m., he gave up, went to his home office, and immersed himself in SpaceX schematics. The familiar complexity of rocket engineering calmed him. Here was a world where problems had solutions, where physics followed predictable rules, where hard work and intelligence could overcome almost any obstacle. Unlike human emotions, unlike the messy tangle of the past, by dawn, he had made his decision. He would meet Gareth, hear him out, and then move on. No drama, no emotional scenes, just closure. He texted Lerato, "What time?" Her reply came minutes later. 10 a.m., room 7112, Westwood Pavilion. Private entrance through the south lobby. Elon confirmed and prepared for the day. He chose casual clothes, jeans and a plain black t-shirt. No suit armor today. This wasn't a business meeting. On the drive to UCLA Medical Center, his resolve wavered. He nearly turned around twice, questioning why he was putting himself through this. The rational part of his brain argued that meeting Gareth served no practical purpose. The past couldn't be changed. Forgiveness wouldn't alter the trajectory of either of their lives. But another part, the part he rarely acknowledged, needed answers only Gareth could provide. He parked in the private section of the hospital, garage as instructed. A security guard escorted him through a service entrance and up a dedicated elevator, carefully protecting him from any lurking press. Elon's phone buzzed as he ascended. It was Talia, his assistant. "Your schedule is clear until 2 p.m. as requested. The Starship meeting has been moved to later this afternoon. PR team is standing by if you need anything after your meeting." He typed a quick "thanks" as the elevator doors opened. The hospital corridor was quiet, with none of the usual bustle. They had cleared this section for his visit. The guard led him to room 7112 and then discreetly stepped away. Elon stood motionless, outside the door. Inside was the man who had cast such a long shadow over his childhood. The man he had partly built his life in opposition to. His hand hesitated on the door handle. "Mr. Musk?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. A woman in her 40s with close-cropped hair and kind eyes approached. "I'm Lerato. We spoke on the phone." Elon nodded, finding his voice. "How is he today?" "Weak, but alert. The doctors gave him something for the pain that won't make him too drowsy." She studied his face. "He's very grateful you came." "I haven't decided anything yet," Elon said quickly. "About forgiveness." "I understand." She gestured toward the door. "Should I go in with you, or would you prefer privacy?" Elon considered. "Privacy, at least at first." "Of course. I'll be at the nurse's station if you need anything." She paused. Just so you're prepared, he doesn't look like the man you remember. The cancer has taken a toll. With that warning, she walked away, leaving Elon alone at the threshold again. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders as if preparing for battle, and opened the door. The room was large for a hospital, with medical equipment lining one wall and a window overlooking the UCLA campus on another. In the center was a bed where Gareth Venter lay propped up on pillows. Elon had braced himself, but the transformation still shocked him. The powerful, intimidating businessman of his childhood memories had been reduced to this: a skeletal figure with paper-thin skin and sunken eyes. Only the bright blue of those eyes remained unchanged, fixing on Elon as he entered. Elon. Gareth's voice was a whisper, but clear. You came. Elon moved further into the room but maintained distance, stopping at the foot of the bed. You said there were things I should know? No greeting, no pleasantries, just straight to the point. A ghost of a smile touched Gareth's lips. Still direct. Some things never change. Some things do, Elon replied, gesturing to the room around them, to the years that separated the boy he had been from the man he had become. Yes. Gareth's smile faded. I never imagined this is how we would meet again. Me dying in a hospital bed, you one of the most famous men on the planet. Elon remained silent, his expression unreadable. Please. Gareth indicated a chair near the bed. This may take some time, and I'm not as strong as I once was. After a moment's hesitation, Elon took the seat, perching on its edge, ready to rise at any moment. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained impassive, a skill he had perfected in countless high-stakes business negotiations. But this wasn't business. This was the most personal conversation he would ever have. I'm listening, he said. Gareth adjusted himself slightly, wincing with the effort. His skeletal hands rested on the thin hospital blanket, a stark contrast to the strong, manicured hands Elon remembered from childhood. First, Gareth began, I want to say I'm sorry, truly sorry for the pain I caused your family, for the security that was taken from you as a child. Elon's expression remained neutral. You could have written that in your letter. True. Gareth nodded weakly. But I wanted to say it while looking you in the eyes. And there's much more I need to tell you. Gareth took a sip of water from a cup beside his bed, his hand trembling with the effort. I've followed your career from the beginning, from Zip2 through PayPal, then SpaceX and Tesla. Not many people would bet everything on rockets and electric cars. A faint smile crossed his face. You were always different, even as a boy. Always thinking beyond what others could see. This isn't about my career, Elon said curtly. No, but it's relevant. Gareth's blue eyes held steady on Elon's face. Because I've often wondered how much of your drive, your willingness to risk everything, your need to succeed where others fail, came from what happened in Pretoria. Elon shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The question hit too close to the conversations he'd had with Dr. Chen over the years. You're giving yourself too much importance, he said. Perhaps. Gareth nodded. But trauma shapes us, Elon. You don't need me to tell you that. A heavy silence filled the room. A machine beeped softly, monitoring Gareth's vital signs. What happened? Elon finally asked, his voice lower. The real story, not what was in the newspapers. Gareth closed his eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. When he opened them, they were clearer, more focused. Your father and I became business partners in 1985. On the surface, We were developing technologies for mining companies. The business was legitimate at first. He paused, studying Elon's reaction. But Errol had other connections, people involved in moving money across borders, avoiding sanctions during apartheid. He brought me in gradually. Small things at first, then larger transactions. Elon's brow furrowed. My father was laundering money? Among other things, Gareth confirmed. I was hesitant initially, but my first wife had left me, taking our daughter. My legitimate businesses were struggling. The extra income was substantial. Elon leaned forward slightly. So you're saying you both were criminals? Yes. Gareth met his gaze without flinching. I've had decades to justify it to myself, but the simple truth is, we broke laws. We moved money for people who didn't want questions asked. And it worked, for a while. Until it didn't, Elon prompted. Until your father got greedy. Gareth's voice hardened slightly. He started skimming funds, taking more than our agreed percentage. The people we were working for, dangerous people. They noticed. Elon stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This wasn't the story he'd grown up with. In his family's version, Gareth had embezzled from their joint businesses, gambling, away the money before fleeing. Why should I believe any of this? He asked, his back to Gareth. My father told a completely different story. I imagine he did. Gareth's voice was tired but steady. It was easier than admitting the truth. Easier for your mother to believe. I was simply a bad man who stole from her husband. Easier for everyone. Elon turned back to face him. Except you. You went to prison. 14 months. Gareth nodded. A reduced sentence for cooperation, though I never implicated your father. I took full blame for the embezzlement charges. Why? The question was sharp, demanding. Why protect him after what he did? Gareth was quiet for a moment. Not for him, for your family. The people we were working for wanted their money back. All of it. I had a choice. Give them everything I had, or let them take everything from your family too. He paused, his breathing more labored. I chose to protect your mother and you children. I confessed to embezzling from our legitimate ventures. Said I'd gambled it all away. The court believed it. Your family lost your home, your comfortable life, but you were safe. If I had revealed the truth about Errol's dealings, the consequences would have been far worse. Elon returned to his chair, his mind racing. Could this be true? It contradicted everything he thought he knew about that period of his life. You expect me to believe you sacrificed yourself for us? His voice was skeptical. The man I remember cared only about himself. The man you remember was playing a role, Gareth said quietly. It was easier if everyone, including you children, believed I was the villain. Your mother took you all to Canada. Your father started fresh with a new story, and eventually a new family. And I paid my debt. Elon shook his head, struggling to reconcile this version with his memories. I saw you, you know, after everything fell apart. Through the window of that restaurant on Pretoria Street. You were celebrating with champagne while my family was falling apart. Pain flickered across Gareth's face. I remember that day. You were walking past, and our eyes met. You looked so betrayed, so hurt. But I wasn't celebrating, Elon. That was a meeting with the lawyers, arranging to transfer the last of my assets before the sentencing. Lorato entered quietly with a syringe, administering medication into Gareth's IV line. You need to rest soon, she told him softly. Gareth nodded but kept his focus on Elon. "There's more you should know." Elon sat in silence, his world tilting on its axis. The foundation of his understanding of his childhood was cracking beneath him. "Your mother," Gareth continued after Lorato left, "May was remarkable through it all. She suspected something wasn't right long before everything collapsed. She wrote to me, asking questions. I never answered, but I kept her letters." He gestured weakly toward the small table beside his bed. "In the drawer, a blue envelope." Elon hesitated, then opened the drawer and removed a worn blue envelope. Inside were several handwritten letters, his mother's elegant script immediately recognizable. He scanned the contents, his heart pounding harder with each line. In these letters, his mother expressed concerns about Errol's business dealings, asked Gareth directly if they were involved in anything illegal, and implored him to consider the welfare of the children. She knew? Elon looked up, stunned. "She suspected," Gareth corrected. "Your mother is an intelligent woman, but she never knew the full extent. I never confirmed her fears. It was safer for her that way." Elon carefully returned the letters to the envelope, his hands uncharacteristically unsteady. "Why tell me all this now? What do you hope to gain?" "Nothing for myself," Gareth said. "I'll be dead soon. But you've built your life partly on hatred. For me, on the story that I destroyed your family's security out of greed and selfishness. I thought perhaps knowing the truth might free you from that burden." "If it's the truth," Elon countered. "I have no reason to lie now." Gareth's voice grew fainter as the medication took effect. "Check the court records if you don't believe me. The case files, the banking transfers. It's all there if you look deep enough." His eyes began to droop. "I don't ask for forgiveness, Elon. What happened to your family was still partly my fault. My choices, my weaknesses. But I wanted you to know that I tried, in the end, to protect you all. For whatever that's worth." Elon sat motionless as Gareth drifted into a medicated sleep. His mind was a storm of conflicting emotions and thoughts. The story he had built his life around, the betrayal that had shaped his distrust, his drive, his determination to never be vulnerable, was being challenged at its foundation. He rose quietly and moved to the door, needing space to process. Lorato was waiting outside. "He'll sleep for a few hours now," she said. "You can come back later if you want to talk more." Elon nodded distractedly. "I need to verify some things." "Of course." She studied his face with compassion. "It's a lot to take in, isn't it? When the past you thought you knew turns out to be something different?" "If it's true," Elon said, more to himself than to her. "He has no reason to lie," Lorato echoed Gareth's words. "Not now. He's made his peace with dying. This meeting with you was his last unfinished business." As Elon walked back toward the elevator, his phone vibrated with messages and alerts, the outside world demanding his attention. But for once, rocket launches and electric car production seemed distant, unimportant compared to the earthquake that had just shaken the foundations of his understanding of himself. If Gareth was telling the truth, what did that mean for the narrative Elon had constructed about his life? For the motivations that had driven him for decades? For the walls he had built to protect himself from ever being betrayed again? He needed time. Time to think. Time to investigate. Time to reconcile the boy he had been with the man he had become. Elon drove aimlessly through Los Angeles, his thoughts too chaotic to return to work. The carefully structured reality he had built over decades was crumbling around him. If Gareth was telling the truth, and Elon still had doubts, then the foundation of his understanding of his childhood was flawed. Eventually, he found himself at a small park overlooking the city. He sat on a bench, the blue envelope of his mother's letters beside him. His phone buzzed. It was Marion, his PR director. "The press is speculating wildly about your meeting. Need a statement soon," Elon texted back. "Nothing yet. I'll call later." Another message came through, this time from his mother. How did it go? He stared at her question, unsure how to respond. Should he ask her directly about the letters? About her suspicions of his father's illegal activities? But that conversation couldn't happen over text. It needed to be face-to-face, or at least voice-to-voice. "Still processing," he replied simply. His mind returned to Gareth's revelations. There was one person who could help him verify the truth: his father. They rarely spoke, their relationship having deteriorated over the years to occasional phone calls on birthdays and holidays. But if anyone could confirm or deny Gareth's story, it was Elon Musk. Before he could think better of it, Elon dialed his father's number in South Africa. Given the time difference, Errol would likely be having dinner. "Elon?" His father's voice betrayed surprise. "Is everything all right? It's not my birthday." "I'm with Gareth Venter," Elon said, skipping any greeting. It wasn't strictly true, he had left the hospital, but it would provoke an unguarded reaction. The silence that followed was telling. "Gareth?" Errol's voice had lost its casual tone. "He's in South Africa? Los Angeles, dying of cancer." Elon kept his voice neutral. "He's been telling me some interesting stories about your business ventures in the 80s. Another long pause. "Whatever he's told you, you can't trust him," Errol said finally. "He's a convicted criminal, a man who stole from us." "Is he?" Elon pressed. "Or was that just the story that was convenient for everyone to believe?" "What exactly has he been saying?" Errol's voice had an edge now. "Money laundering, illegal transactions during apartheid, you skimming from dangerous people." Elon listed the allegations flatly. "He claims he took the fall to protect us." Errol's laugh sounded forced. "That's absurd. He's trying to rewrite history on his deathbed." "Then explain something to me," Elon continued. "If Gareth embezzled from your legitimate businesses and gambled the money away, how did he have enough left to make that restitution payment to the court? The one that kept him from serving a full sentence?" This detail had bothered Elon since leaving the hospital. He had done a quick search on his phone, finding old newspaper articles about Gareth's case that mentioned a substantial payment. The silence stretched longer this time. "It's complicated, Elon," his father finally said. "Business, dealings from that era. There were many moving parts." "That's not an answer. What do you want from me?" Errol's voice rose. "To confess to something after all these years? What good would that do anyone? Your mother has rebuilt her life. You and your siblings are successful. Why dig up the past?" It was as close to an admission as Elon was likely to get. He felt a cold certainty settling in his stomach. "I've spent my life believing Gareth Venter destroyed our family out of greed," Elon said quietly. "I've carried that with me through everything, and now you're telling me it wasn't even true." "It wasn't that simple," Errol protested. "Yes, we were both involved in some questionable transactions, but Gareth wasn't some hero. He was as deep in it as I was until things went wrong. But when things did go wrong, he protected us. Didn't he?" Elon's voice hardened. "He went to prison, gave up everything, while you started over, telling everyone you were the victim." Errol was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, His voice had a defensive edge. I did what I had to do, to survive, to move forward. We all did. Not all of us had that luxury, Elon replied. Some of us have been living with the consequences of your choices for decades. He ended the call without saying goodbye, his hand shaking slightly as he set the phone down. The truth was becoming clearer, and with it came a surge of complicated emotions. Anger at his father for the lies, confusion about Gareth's role, and, beneath it all, a question that shook him to his core. If his understanding of this formative childhood trauma was wrong, what did that mean for the man he had become? Elon opened the blue envelope again, rereading his mother's letters to Gareth. In one, dated just weeks before everything collapsed, she had written, "I don't know exactly what you and Errol are involved in, but I sense it's dangerous. Whatever happens, please remember there are 3 children who will be affected by your choices." Elon especially takes everything to heart. He notices more than you think. His mother had been trying to protect them. Even then, had she known more than she ever admitted to her children? As the sun began to set over Los Angeles, Elon's phone rang again. It was Lorato. "Mr. Musk, I'm sorry to disturb you," she began, her voice gentle but urgent. "Gareth's condition has worsened. Suddenly. The doctors say he likely won't make it through the night. He's asking for you." Elon closed his eyes. He wasn't ready for another conversation. He hadn't sorted through the first one yet. But time wasn't on Gareth's side. "Tell him I'll be there in an hour," he said. After hanging up, Elon sat for a moment, longer, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as darkness fell. Then he gathered the letters, returned to his car, and drove back toward the hospital. There were still questions only Gareth could answer, and apparently, there wasn't much time left to ask them. The hospital corridors were quiet as Elon made his way back to Gareth's room. Night shift nurses nodded respectfully as he passed, but no one approached him. His celebrity status created an invisible barrier that, for once, he appreciated. When he entered room 712, the change in Gareth was immediately apparent. His skin had taken on a grayish tone, and his breathing was more labored. Lorato stood by his side, adjusting something on one of the monitors. "He's been drifting in and out," she said softly. "But he's been asking for you." As if hearing her words, Gareth's eyes fluttered open. When they focused on Elon, a faint smile crossed his face. "You came back," he whispered. "I had more questions," Elon replied, taking the seat beside the bed. Lorato quietly excused herself, leaving them alone. "I talked to my father," Elon said without preamble. "He didn't exactly confess, but he didn't deny your story either." Gareth's chest rose and fell with effort. Errol was always good at avoiding direct answers. "Why didn't you tell anyone? The truth back then?" Elon asked. "After you got out of prison, you could have cleared your name." What would that have accomplished? Gareth's voice was faint but clear. "Your mother had already taken you children to Canada. You were building new lives, dragging up the past, exposing your father. It would only have caused more pain." Elon was silent for a moment, processing this. "All these years, I've thought of you as the villain in my story. It shaped how I see the world, how I run my companies, how I treat people who want to get close to me." "I'm sorry for that," Gareth said. "Truly. But look at what you've accomplished. Perhaps that distrust, that drive to prove yourself, perhaps it served a purpose." "Maybe," Elon conceded. "But at what cost?" The question hung in the air between them. Elon thought of his failed marriages, his complicated relationships with his children, the reputation he had for being brilliant but difficult, demanding, sometimes cruel. "I have one more question," Elon said finally. "The most important one. Why did you really take the fall? The whole truth this time?" Gareth's eyes, still startlingly blue in his gray face, held Elon's gaze. "Because of you children. Especially you, Elon. I saw something in you. Something remarkable. The way your mind worked. Your curiosity. Your vision, even then. I couldn't let them come after your family." He paused, gathering strength. "I had already lost my own daughter to divorce. I knew I'd never see her grow up. But you, I believed you could do extraordinary things if you had the chance." Elon looked away, uncomfortable with the emotion welling up inside him. "You barely knew me." "Sometimes you see potential in an instant," Gareth replied, "like striking a match in a dark room." A nurse entered to check Gareth's vitals, interrupting the moment. When she left, Gareth seemed even more tired, his words coming with greater effort. "There's something else. In my bedside drawer, under the letters." Elon opened the drawer and found a worn leather pouch beneath the blue envelope. Inside was a small key and a note with an address and safe deposit box number. "What is this?" he asked. "Something I've kept all these years. Go there. When you have time." Gareth's eyes began to droop. "It might help you understand." Elon slipped the pouch into his pocket. "I'll go tomorrow." They sat in silence for a while. The beeping of the monitors and Gareth's labored breathing, the only sounds in the room. Elon found himself thinking about the parallel lives they had led. Gareth losing everything while Elon built his empire, each shaped by the same events, but with vastly different outcomes. "May I ask you something?" Gareth's voice had faded to barely above a whisper. Elon nodded. "Was it worth it? All you've accomplished. The rockets, the cars, changing the world. Was it worth the personal cost?" It was a question Elon rarely allowed himself to consider. Success had always been the goal, the only acceptable outcome. The collateral damage to relationships, to his own well-being, that was simply the price of changing the world. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I'm not sure I know how to measure that." Gareth's smile was barely perceptible. "Something to think about. In your rocket ships." His eyes closed again, exhaustion overwhelming him. Elon sat with him as the night deepened, listening to his breathing grow more irregular. Nurses came and went. Lerato returned, her face showing professional concern mixed with personal grief. "You don't have to stay," she told Elon gently. "I'll stay a bit longer," he replied, surprising himself. As midnight approached, Elon found himself doing something unexpected, telling the unconscious Gareth about his companies, his vision for Mars colonization, his hopes for sustainable energy. It was easier, somehow, to share these things with someone who couldn't respond, couldn't judge. In those quiet hours at Gareth's bedside, something shifted inside Elon. The anger that had been his companion for so long began to loosen its grip, not vanishing entirely, but transforming into something more complex, more nuanced. The villain of his childhood story had become a real person, flawed, complicated, capable of both selfishness and sacrifice. And if Elon could see Gareth with these new eyes, perhaps he could begin to see himself differently too, not just as the boy who had been betrayed, who had vowed never to be vulnerable again, but as a man who had allowed that betrayal to shape him in ways both powerful and limiting. It was nearly dawn when Elon finally left the hospital, the weight of the past 35 years both heavier and lighter on his shoulders. Elon slept for 3 hours in his own bed before waking to a barrage of notifications. The media frenzy had intensified overnight. Speculation about his meeting with Gareth dominated tech news sites and social media. A text from Lerato arrived as he was showering. "He's still with us, but not responsive. The doctors say it could be hours or days." Marion, his PR director, had sent multiple urgent messages. "We need to address this. The silence is creating a vacuum that others are filling. Call me ASAP." As Elon drove to SpaceX headquarters, he listened to a news segment about him on the radio. Sources close to the Musk family suggest this mysterious Gareth Venter was responsible for the family's financial collapse in South Africa, forcing them to emigrate to Canada. The question everyone is asking, will tech's most unforgiving CEO forgive the man who destroyed his childhood? Elon switched off the radio with a sharp jab. They had the story all wrong. But how could they know? He barely knew the truth himself. At SpaceX, he found Marion waiting in his office, tablet in hand. "Good morning," she said, studying his face. "Rough night?" "You could say that." Elon dropped into his chair. "What's the damage?" "Every outlet is running with this story. Your father gave a brief statement to a South African newspaper. Vague statements about complicated business relationships and wishing Mr. Venter peace in his final days." Elon's jaw tightened. Of course his father would take the high road, publicly, while avoiding any actual truth. "Your siblings are getting bombarded with questions," Marion continued. "And we've had to increase security at Tesla and SpaceX. Reporters are staking out both locations." "What do you recommend?" Elon asked. A brief statement. Nothing detailed, just enough to acknowledge the situation without feeding the frenzy. Then we pivot back to the Starship launch next week. Elon was quiet for a moment, considering. The easy path would be exactly what Marion suggested. A minimal statement, a strategic pivot, a return to business as usual. But something had changed in him during those quiet hours at Gareth's bedside. The carefully constructed walls between his past and present had begun to crumble. Perhaps it was time to be more honest, not just with the public, but with himself. "What about an interview?" he said suddenly. Marion blinked in surprise. "An interview? About Gareth?" "Not just about him. About childhood trauma. About mental health. About how our pasts shape us." "That's unexpected." Marion tapped her tablet thoughtfully. "It would need to be carefully managed. The right interviewer, the right format." "Anderson Cooper," Elon said decisively. "His mother is Gloria Vanderbilt. He understands complicated family dynamics and wealth. And he's fair." By mid-afternoon, the arrangements were made. Cooper would interview Elon that evening at his home. The segment would air the following night, giving the team time to review and request minor edits if necessary. Talia helped Elon prepare, clearing his schedule and bringing him food he barely touched. His mind was elsewhere, on the safe deposit box Gareth had mentioned, on the conversation he still needed to have with his mother, on the approaching Starship launch that had once seemed the most important event of his week. When Cooper arrived with a small crew, Elon was ready. They set up in his minimalist living room, the SpaceX and Tesla headquarters visible through the windows in the distance. "I appreciate you doing this," Cooper said, as the crew made final lighting adjustments. "I know you rarely discuss personal matters." Elon nodded. "Some stories need to be told correctly. This is one of them." The interview began with gentle questions about Elon's childhood in South Africa, gradually moving toward the Gareth situation. Elon found himself speaking with unexpected candor. The narrative I believed for most of my life was that Gareth Venter betrayed my family out of greed, he told Cooper. That shaped me, my drive, my approach to business, my caution in relationships. But I've recently learned the story is more complicated. In what way? Cooper asked. Elon chose his words carefully. Let's just say that good and evil aren't always clearly defined, especially when viewed through a child's eyes. He didn't reveal everything. Some truths weren't his alone to tell, but he spoke openly about how childhood trauma can create lasting patterns, how the narrative we build about our past influences our future. Would you say you've forgiven Gareth Venter? Cooper asked toward the end. Elon was silent for a moment. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, he said finally. It's a process. I'm still in that process. After the crew packed up and left, Elon stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a message from Tosca. Just saw a clip from the interview. Proud of you, big brother. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of peace. Not because everything was resolved, far from it, but because he had begun to integrate his past and present in a way he had always avoided before. Tomorrow he would visit the safe deposit box, but tonight he had taken the first step toward a different kind of future. The bank was a small, discreet establishment in Westwood, not far from UCLA Medical Center. Early morning light slanted through tall windows as Elon presented his identification and the key to access Gareth's safe deposit box. Mr. Venter added you as an authorized user just last month, the manager explained, leading him to a private room. He was quite insistent about the paperwork being in order. Gareth had been planning this for weeks then. Even before sending the letter, Elon wondered what could be so important that a dying man would take such care to ensure it reached him. Left alone with the metal box, he inserted the key and lifted the lid. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a cardboard tube that appeared to contain drawings or blueprints. A sealed envelope lay on top with his name written in Gareth's shaky handwriting. Elon opened the envelope first. Elon, if you're reading this, I've either told you everything or run out of time to do so. Inside this journal, you'll find the complete story of what happened between your father and me. Dates, transactions, names. I've kept these records for 35 years, not for revenge, but as insurance against those who might still hold grudges. The blueprints may interest you more. They're from 1988, designs for a modular rocket system I was developing before everything fell apart. You may not remember, but you saw these once when you were 10. You asked so many questions I couldn't answer. Your eyes lit up with possibilities I couldn't imagine. I don't show you these things to claim credit or connection to your achievements. Your success is entirely your own. But perhaps knowing that the seed of your interest in rockets wasn't planted in soil tainted by betrayal might offer some peace. Gareth Elon set the letter aside, his hands not quite steady as he opened the journal. Inside were meticulous records of business dealings, many involving his father. Dates, amounts, coded names, evidence. That would have sent both men to prison for much longer than Gareth's 14 months. He closed the journal after scanning just a few pages. The past was the past. The details didn't matter as much as the broader truth, that his childhood understanding had been incomplete. Next, he unrolled the blueprints. The designs were crude by modern standards, but remarkably innovative for their time. Memories flickered at the edges of his consciousness, sitting in Gareth's office, peppering him with questions about thrust vectors and fuel mixtures while the adults laughed at his intensity. Had those plans sparked something in his young mind? Had they planted a seed that would later grow into SpaceX? It was impossible to know for certain, but the possibility created a strange connection across time, linking the boy he had been to the man he had become through an unexpected channel. Elon carefully repacked everything and left the bank. He had one more visit to make, Gareth's hospital. Room was quieter today. The machines still beeped and hummed, but there was a stillness about the figure in the bed that hadn't been there before. Lerato sat beside him, reading aloud from a book. She looked up when Elon entered. "He's still with us, but unresponsive since last night. The doctors say it's just a matter of time." Elon nodded, taking the seat across from her. "I found the safe deposit box. He'd want to know that." She closed her book. "I'll give you some privacy." Alone with Gareth, Elon studied the face of the man he had spent decades hating. In repose, with the lines of pain smoothed away, he looked different. Younger somehow. Closer to the man from Elon's childhood memories. "I got your letter," Elon said, knowing Gareth probably couldn't hear him, but needing to speak the words anyway. "And I saw the blueprints. I do remember that day in your office. You were the first adult who didn't laugh at my questions about rockets." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I don't know if those blueprints influenced my path. Maybe they did. Maybe they were just one of many sparks. But I appreciate knowing they existed. That not everything from that time was tainted." The steady beeping of the heart monitor was his only answer. "I'm still processing everything you told me," Elon continued, "still trying to understand what it means for who I am, who I've become. But I wanted you to know that I believe you, and that I—" He hesitated, the words still difficult. "I forgive you." The admission felt strange on his tongue, but also right. Not because Gareth deserved forgiveness. Perhaps he did. Perhaps he didn't. But because Elon himself needed to release the weight of resentment he had carried for so long. "Not just for your sake," he added, "but for mine." Elon sat with Gareth for another hour, sometimes speaking about his companies, his vision for the future, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence. It was a kind of peace he rarely allowed himself, to simply be present without working, planning, or pushing forward. When Lerato returned, she had news. "Your interview clip is going viral. Social media is calling it your most human moment ever." Elon grimaced slightly. "That's not exactly a high bar." She smiled. "Don't underestimate what it means to people. Seeing someone like you acknowledge vulnerability, trauma, the complicated nature of forgiveness. It matters." As Elon prepared to leave, Lerato touched his arm lightly. "He probably won't make it through the night. Would you like me to call you when—" "Yes," Elon said. "Please do." Outside the hospital, the California sunshine felt different somehow. Brighter, clearer. Elon's phone buzzed with work notifications, interview requests, and messages from family. The world continued its relentless pace, but something had shifted inside him. The narrative he had constructed about his life, about betrayal driving, his success, about distrust keeping him safe, had been complicated by Gareth's revelations, not invalidated entirely, but expanded, deepened. He was still Elon Musk, driven, demanding, focused on changing the world. But perhaps he could be those things without the armor of anger he had worn for so long. Perhaps he could allow more connections, more vulnerability, knowing that his strength came not just from his response to trauma, but from something more fundamental within him. As he drove toward SpaceX, toward the rockets that would soon reach for Mars, Elon felt lighter than he had in years, not because the past had been erased, but because it had finally been faced. The call came at 2:17 a.m. Elon had been working late in his home office, reviewing launch preparations for Starship, when Lorato's name appeared on his phone. "He's gone," she said simply, very peacefully, about 20 minutes ago. Elon was surprised by the wave of emotion that washed over him. Not just sadness, but a complex mixture of feelings for a man who had been both villain and unexpected ally in his life story. "Thank you for letting me know," he said, "and for taking care of him." "There's something else," Lorato added. He regained consciousness briefly at the end. "Asked me to give you a message." Elon's grip tightened on the phone. "What was it?" He said, "Tell Elon to look at the third page of blueprints. The answer is there." "Does that make sense to you?" Didn't. Elon had looked through all the blueprints in the safe deposit box. There had been nothing unusual about the third page, just technical drawings of fuel delivery systems. "Sort of," he replied. "I'll figure it out." After hanging up, Elon sat motionless, processing the finality of Gareth's death. The man who had haunted his memories for 35 years was gone. The chance for any further conversations, explanations, or reconciliations had ended. At dawn, unable to sleep, Elon drove back to the bank. It opened at 9 a.m. and he was the first customer requesting access to Gareth's safe deposit box again. The manager seemed surprised. "Again so soon, Mr. Musk?" "There's something I missed," Elon explained. Once alone with the box, he carefully removed the blueprints and spread them out on the table. The third page showed detailed drawings of a propellant management system, innovative for its time, but nothing that explained Gareth's cryptic final message. Elon examined it more closely, turning the page to catch different angles of light. That's when he noticed it, a slight thickness to one corner of the paper. Upon closer inspection, he found 2 pages had been carefully glued together. Using a letter opener from the desk, he gently separated them. Between the pages was a handwritten letter dated March 10, 1989, just days before the Musk family's financial collapse. "Errol, I've discovered your deception. The funds you're diverting aren't just from our partners, but from your family's accounts as well. You're setting me up to take the fall while you walk away with everything. I won't let you destroy May and the children. I've made copies of all transactions and secured them where you'll never find them. If anything happens to me or to your family, these records go to the authorities. Either we come clean together and face the consequences of our actions, or I will take whatever steps necessary to protect your wife and children. Especially Elon, who deserves better than the example we've set." Gareth, next to this, was a second note in the same handwriting, but clearly written decades later. "Elon, this letter was never delivered. The day after I wrote it, our partners discovered Errol's skimming. Everything unraveled too quickly. I made the choice to protect your family by taking full blame, hoping your father would at least take care of you all with what he'd hidden away. I didn't know then that he would abandon your mother, that you would all struggle so badly, that you would carry the weight of his betrayal, mistakenly directed at me, for so many years. The most painful irony, I wasn't the one who betrayed your family. I was trying to prevent it. Your father betrayed us both." The truth, finally told. Gareth Elon sat back, stunned. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Gareth hadn't been his father's accomplice, who nobly took the fall when things went wrong. He had discovered Errol's plan to sacrifice both Gareth and his own family, and had acted to prevent it. The man Elon had spent decades hating had actually been trying to protect them all along. With shaking hands, he carefully refolded the papers and tucked them into his pocket. Some truths were too personal, too painful to leave in a bank vault. 3 days later, Elon stood alone at Gareth's small funeral service. Lorato was there, along with a few hospital staff who had cared for him. No family, no old friends, just a handful of people marking the passing of a man who had lived his final days seeking redemption. After the simple service, Elon drove to SpaceX. The Starship launch was scheduled for the following day, and final preparations were underway. As he walked through the facility, watching his teams work with focused precision on the massive rocket, he felt a strange connection across time. The boy who had sat under a jacaranda tree reading about rockets, the young man who had left South Africa with barely $100 in his pocket, the entrepreneur who had risked everything again and again to build something no one believed possible, and now the man who had finally discovered that his origin story wasn't what he had always believed. In his office, Elon unrolled Gareth's old blueprints beside the modern designs for Starship. There was a through line connecting them, not because one had directly influenced the other, but because the same human drive to explore, to push boundaries, to imagine new possibilities had inspired both. His phone rang, Tosca calling about the interview, which had aired to tremendous response. "You okay?" she asked. "You seem different." "I am," he replied. "I learned something about Gareth, about Dad, about all of it." "Do I want to know?" Elon considered the question. Someday. Not yet. Some revelations needed time. Some truths were still too raw to share. That evening, as the California sun set behind the massive Starship rocket on its launch pad, Elon stood alone, contemplating the journey that had brought him here. Not just the technical achievements or business successes, but the emotional path from a wounded boy in Pretoria to the man he was still becoming. The truth about Gareth hadn't erased the past. The trauma of his childhood remained part of him. But understanding that trauma differently, knowing that his life had been shaped not just by betrayal, but also by someone's attempt to protect him, offered a new perspective. A perspective that might allow him to move forward with slightly less armor, slightly more trust, slightly greater capacity for connection. Tomorrow, Starship would reach for the stars, and Elon Musk would continue his own journey, changed by a truth that had waited 35 years to be told. That was the end of this story about Elon Musk and the man who shaped his childhood. I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey of discovery and forgiveness. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting and thought-provoking content like this. Don't forget to share with your friends and family to spread kindness and awareness about how our understanding of the past can change with new perspectives. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon with another captivating story.